I just want to go back and recap from the start very quickly and go all the way through number 5. All right. So what was step 1 of the strategic management process? All right, so develop a strategic mission, vision, and set of core values. Okay? That is step 1. And recall what I said probably last week. Because this is a process and it's meant to go in an order, whenever you're working with another group of people and they say, you know what, we need to develop a strategy for something, some people jump right into strategy execution mode. But that's all the way down at step 4. The very first thing you need to do is to understand, what is our mission? So who are we? How do we create value? Who do we create it for? It's at a group level or a personal level. So you need to be very clear about, what is the mission? After you're clear on the mission, then you jump to the vision. So it's a forward-looking assessment of where it is that you want to be. So we are successful at carrying out the mission. What does success look like? So what is our vision for the future? So once you're clear about that vision, that where we're wanting to go, then we need to decide, what are the principles that we are going to live by as we carry out our mission and pursue our vision. That's our core values. And so I always recommend that you have at least 5 to 7 core values. These are the principles that you're going to stand by, that you don't compromise for anybody. You don't compromise them for an employer, for a coworker, for a customer, anybody. If you're put into a position where you feel like you have to compromise your values, it's probably time to look for employment somewhere else. The other thing that I said, and make sure you write this down, I'm sure you probably wrote it down Tuesday, it's very important to understand the mission, vision, and values of the organization that you're working with now, or the organization that you want to work with. And then you need to compare that to your own personal mission, vision, and values. And you need to make an assessment as to the extent to which those things are in alignment. And there's any conflict between your mission, vision, and values and the organization's mission, vision, and values, then it may be time for you to think about finding employment somewhere else. Or if you're considering multiple job offers, maybe the organization that has the best fit with your own mission, vision, and values is an organization that you need to be a part of. From a theoretical standpoint, that's what we call person-organization fit. That's what we talk about in the management literature, what we call PO fit, person-organization fit, making sure you fit with the organization. All right, so that's stage 1. Stage 2 is what? All right, setting objectives. All right, so SMART criteria. Our objectives need to adhere to what criteria? All right, so our goals and our objectives should be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-oriented. Now, depending on where you look, some textbooks and some sites make a distinction between goals and objectives. I tend to look at goals and objectives as the same thing, but I think on the exam's going to talk about objectives, but just know I look at objectives and goals as the same way, and I don't think there are any questions on the exam that ask you the difference between goals and objectives. Does anybody see those as different or the same? For the purposes of this class, in strategy, we're going to have at least 2 types of objectives. So financial objectives, strategic objectives, you will see that on the exam. So organizations have to set financial objectives and strategic objectives. Another thing that's really important to know, especially for the exam, is that which of those objectives should drive the others. So should your strategic objectives drive your financial objectives, or should your financial objectives drive your strategic objectives? All right, so the strategic objectives really get us to the end. The financial objectives are just a means to get to that end. I like that. I like that. The other important thing to know about why you want to set your strategic objectives first is because if you set your financial objectives and then let everything else be driven by the financial objectives, organizations have a tendency to engage in unethical behavior when they do that. So you think about an organization like HealthSouth that, they were really driven. This was during the Richard Scrushy era when they really set all these financial objectives. I think they had posted like 10 years worth of quarters of returns where they didn't have a loss. And that's like unheard of, to go 10 solid years and always show an increase in revenues and stock price. It's unheard of. There was a reason why. They were cooking the books. So that's what happens when you set these, unrealistic financial objectives. It causes you to engage in unethical behavior. You think about, was it Wells Fargo a couple months ago that got embroiled in a scandal where they had these sales goals? And so what happens is they set these unrealistic sales goals. And so they started encouraging the employees to start setting up these false accounts just so that they would match the sales goals. So they were opening up new lines of credit in people's names just to meet those goals. So that's another example of why we don't want to let the financial objectives drive the strategic objectives. It should be the other way around. The other part about our strategic objectives, they should also be associated with our core values. So part of our strategic objectives could be we want to be more socially responsible as an organization. We want to be more engaged in our community. Those are also strategic objectives. So you think about that for yourself. How can you be more socially responsible? How can you be more ethical? And how can you use that as a strategic advantage over, your competition when you're competing for jobs or promotions? I gave you an example on Tuesday about when I first started working at Bell South, the way that I dressed, the way that I interacted with people, how I was building my network. Those were goals that I had that really, gave me a competitive edge over people that on paper were, more competitive than I was. I was competing against people that had undergraduate degrees and master's degrees, and I was a college dropout. So I needed something else to kind of level the playing field. So you have to think about what do you have in your arsenal, your toolbox, that you can use in order to compete more effectively. All right, so once we've set smart strategic objectives and smart financial objectives, and that was stage 2, what's stage 3? All right, so we really need to actually develop the strategy. Now notice that's at step 3. Before we start developing the strategy, we need to do the mission, vision, and values and set some objectives first before we actually start crafting the strategy. We also said part of crafting that strategy is your business model. And so the business model canvas that I gave you guys is a good way to kind of flesh out what does that strategy really look like. So you got to think about what resources do I need? What kind of marketing strategy should I have? What's my distribution strategy? Who should be on my team? How do we make money? What are our expenses going to be? Where am I going to get the revenues in order to cover those expenses? How much time is this going to take? So all those things that you have to think about when you're actually developing the strategy. The other thing that's important about stage 3 is carrying out the strategy in a way that exhibits strategic intent. So strategic intent is something that you'll probably see on the exam. And understanding what does it mean to really exhibit strategic intent. And that's really showing a, singular focus and a commitment on achieving the company's mission, vision, values, and its objectives. And mobilizing the company's resources and moving those in a way that's going to help move the company towards success. So strategic intent. So after we've developed the strategy, we got to execute. Okay? So I've seen a lot of really pretty strategies on paper, and that's all they were was pretty pieces of paper. But until you actually start executing is when the rubber hits the road, and that's when we really start making progress. So we have to execute. We have to put people in the right places. We have to assign roles and responsibilities. We need to develop an organizational chart. We need to start selling stuff or producing stuff and then selling it. We need to distribute. After we sell stuff, we need to provide after-sales service. That's from an organizational standpoint. You think about you individually. After you've crafted your strategy, you got to start executing on it. So, Lisa, you got a goal of getting a good job, right? And then we refined that goal of getting a good job, and we said we wanted to get a job as a financial associate at Regions Bank, making anywhere from $45,000 to $51,000 by June 31st, 2017, right? So that sounds good, right?
Right.
Now you got to do something, right?
Right.
You got to put in applications. You got to follow up with thank you notes. You got to go through interview processes. You actually have to start executing on that. You found out how much your student loans are going to be after graduation. Now we got to start executing on our debt reduction strategy. What does that really look like? We start making money, and now we got to open up a bank account, and maybe we want to get the automatic transfers. So every time I get paid on the first, $100 is going to go towards my student loans. I don't even have to touch it. It's automatic. I know when I get paid, Fannie Mae gets paid. So after we start executing, then stage 5 is what? All right, let's talk about your financial objectives. How do you monitor your completion or your progress towards achieving your financial objectives? So let's say, for instance, you have an objective of raising your credit score from 620 to 720 by the end of the year. What does that monitoring process look like? All right, so on Tuesday, we talked about some goals may be so big that we really need to treat those as projects. We may need to have some sub-projects under those big projects. But even with that, so to use that example, maybe you subscribe to some credit monitoring service, and you know on the first of every month, you're going to check your credit score. And did I move from 620 to 630? Did I move from 630 to 640? That's what I mean, like constantly monitoring your progress. Another financial goal could be, paying off your credit card. So say, for instance, you got $500 worth of credit card debt, and you have a goal of paying that off by December 31st, 2018. What does it look like to actually monitor, your progress towards that goal? How could you monitor that? Paying off that $500 worth of credit card debt. Yes, so this is what I recommend. Write this down. You need to, when you develop your objectives, you need to determine how frequently are you going to go and check your progress. Is that bi-weekly? Is that monthly? Is that quarterly? So with the example with Corey, I would just suggest that maybe monthly you're going to check your credit score. Tosin said paying off that $500 credit card balance, maybe you're going to check every 2 weeks. But you need to determine, in your performance management process, how frequently am I going to actually check to understand where am I? Is this objective 50% complete? Is it 20% complete? Is it 90% complete? Sometimes you need to reverse engineer stuff. Okay, so if I have a goal of, paying off my credit card debt, and I'm going to pay it down from 500 to 0 over 10 months, what does that look like? Does that mean that I'm going to pay $50 per month, every month, and then over the course of 10 months, it'll be paid off? And if so, I can check monthly to make sure that I'm doing that. This is what CEOs do, right? CEOs, CFOs, CMOs, CTOs, CIOs, all these other CXOs. They are constantly monitoring the organization's performance. Remember last week we talked about having a dashboard. So write this down. What would it look like if you develop your own personal dashboard, where all the objectives that you set, that you have some kind of spreadsheet or a document where you have all your goals on there, and then maybe on a monthly or quarterly basis, you're tracking, how successful am I at really achieving these objectives and carrying out my strategy. What we're talking about right now is performance management, and performance management is really important to the success of an organization, but it's also important to your personal success. So write this down. I know I tell you guys to write down a lot of stuff. But this is a rhetorical question, but I want you to write it down. I want you to ask yourself this question. What is my performance management strategy? What is my performance management strategy? All right, is it Katarina? Did I say your name right?
Yes.
All right, so Katarina, whose job is it to monitor the performance of the organization?
Performance on all measures?
Mm-hmm.
Stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't it be the CEO or the CFO, depending on if it's operations or if it's financial kind of stuff?
Yeah. Ultimately, it's that top management team of the organization. Okay? Whose job is it not? The employees have a role.
But, I mean, smaller, sort of smaller than top management.
Yes. What I'm getting at is the board of directors. So write this down. You'll see this on the exam. You know, the board of directors, it is their job to help monitor the performance of the organization. It's not their job to actually execute. Their job is to help monitor performance, but their job is not to actually do the work. They don't actually perform, but they monitor the performance of the organization. The board of directors holds management accountable for the performance of the strategy. So I sit on several different boards, and as a board member, it's my job to have a really good grasp of what the organization's strategy is, and then I'm also assessing the management of the organization to see how competent are they in steering the organization towards success. And as a board, if we notice that we don't have the right management in place, then we really have a responsibility to either provide professional development to management to get them to a place where they can steer the organization the right way, or we may have to make the tough decision to remove that management and then to maybe put in new management. That's a tough job, especially when the board of directors oftentimes develops really strong relationships with management of the organization. But you kind of need that dividing line. Now, I think that becomes very challenging considering where we are right now from a public company standpoint, where a lot of the CEOs of organizations are also chairmen of the board of directors. And so in my opinion, that causes a lot of conflicts of interest. Because as a board, how can I really make some objective decisions when the person who's the chair of the board is also the CEO? This is the person that we're supposed to be monitoring and holding accountable. So now you got a person that's holding their own selves accountable.